morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the round of 17 team announcement, where the Vodacom Bulls will host Cardiff Rugby. The team announcement is embargoed until midday, that is 12 o'clock South African time. And then also, could I just make mention for colleagues to make note of, the start time of the fixture is now 1600. A few of you have missed that press release that was issued on the 30th of April. The start time for this fixture is 1600 and not 1645 or 1615, as some media platforms have been reporting on. So if we could just make a note of that for our various articles that we will be publishing. Thank you. The Vodacom Bulls team that will take on Cardiff Rugby is as follows: Jan-Hendrik Wessels at 1, Johan Grobler at 2, Wilkolo at 3, Kobus Visse at 4, JF van Heerden at 5, Marcel Coetzee at 6, Ruan Nokia captain at 7, Cameron Hanekom at 8, Zach Berger at 9, Johan Hussein at 10, Sebastian de Klerk at 11, Harold Foster at 12, David Krill at 13, Kanan Moody at 14, with Ville Leroux at 15. Just to run through that again: Jan-Hendrik Wessels, Johan Grobler, Wilco Louw, Kobus Visse, JF van Heerden, Marcel Coetzee, Ruan Nokia, the captain, Cameron Hanekom, Zach Berger, Johan Hussein, Sebastian de Klerk, Harold Foster, David Kriel, Kanan Moody, and Ville Leroux, in that order from 1 to 15. The impact squad says Aka van der Merwe at 16, Alulu Chagweni at 17, Morney Smith at 18, Janus Kirsten at 19, Marco van Staden at 20, Keegan Johannes at 21, Devin Williams at 22, with Stedman Hans at 23. Okay, can I then ask Yolulu Koshe to kick us off, followed by Nicholas Zal? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dalungas. Good morning to the colleagues. Good morning, Coach Jake. Coach, it's been, I remember asking you before you went on tour, and I asked you what would constitute a successful tour if you can't win every game. You went on to win the URC games and making sure that you're not losing your ground on the third spot and a home playoff final. How crucial was this for this team to learn and grow and be able to win these games away from home, especially against top opposition in Europe and in different surfaces as well?
Yeah, it was very important for us. And, don't take away the fact that we played Munster, who won the tournament 2 years ago. Then we played Glasgow, who won the tournament last year. So it's not just the away wins. It's against the two teams that have gone on and won this competition. And interesting, both those teams have won the competition playing away from home. So it was a massive, as I said after the game, it was a massive win for us in both those fixtures. It was important to us, obviously, because it was, it was and has been very likely that we're going to have to play away at some stage of the tournament in order to win it. So obviously, I'm very, very happy. And but the hard work starts now. Again, I know it's always a cliche from coaches, but we did some we did some really good work on tour. The hard work now is to carry on that momentum and finish off something that we've now created, which is a possible chance of playing at home in the semi-finals.
And Coach, you mentioned momentum. Having won those 3 games at the back end of that European tour, and then had a mini break in between, coming back onto the home leg, how would you have liked to see it as a coach? Would you have rather kept on playing, or was that little break crucial to recover the bodies and to try and go again for another batch of momentum gaining wins?
Yeah, look, I think every cloud has a silver lining, and my answer to that, I would have preferred to have played, beaten Bath, and been in the finals of Europe, because that's why we play rugby. We want to stay in every competition and put our names as deep into the competition as possible and win it. So, but the silver lining is we got a week off to refresh. We got an opportunity now to relook at where we are in the one competition that's left over. And so, all is not negative, but, it would be wrong of me to say, that's the bonus, is we're at home now. I would have loved to have stayed on tour, carried on winning. You know, you would have asked me in a press conference, now that you've won 2 massive games, do you think this momentum is going to help you into the semi-finals? And the answer would have been yes. So the break was fun. And as I said, you know, nothing's changed from any time I've ever spoken to the media. The important thing about every competition is you get into the playoffs, you get your best possible team available for the playoffs, and you prepare everything to make sure that you play your best rugby in the final of every tournament. And you know, we went deep into Europe. We obviously, Champions Cup, we mustn't kid ourselves, but Champions Cup wasn't good for us. And then we got through the rules back into Challenge Cup, and then fell short against Edinburgh away from home. So we would say it's satisfactory. It's not good at all for us as a group, but the fact that we've been able to bounce back against 2 champion teams in Munster and Edinburgh away from home and give ourselves a chance to possibly play a home semi-final is something that we're not going to take lightly.
And lastly, from myself, Coach, how did you manage this week? Coming back from Europe, having a bit of a break, was it a bit of a rest, a bit of lighter training, or were you treating it like a week where you're going to have a game at the end? How did you just manage the team?
No, they were off. I think, again, it would only be fair. 4 weeks away on tour, away from their families. I think it was only fair for me to give them off. So they spent time with their family. Some went away, some went back to visit their parents in the Cape or the Western Cape. Everyone assembled back on Monday morning in the office. And I think the way it is now is we've got 2 weeks, then we got an off week because of the finals of Europe, which we will train, and then we've got the playoffs. So that means hopefully there'll be another 2 games plus 1 week off plus 3 games, which is obviously 6 tough weeks ahead. But that's why I thought it was important to give them completely off last week.
Jake, what do you make of the impact Willie Leroux will bring back? I'm not taking anything away from Devin Williams, but you know, what will Willie Leroux do for the side?
Listen, you know, Nicholas, it was a very, when I say tough call, a very debatable call. You leave, Devin's played really well. He's adapted nicely to that backfield, and he's got pace, and he's also left-footed, which, you know, we're not losing much with the skill sets. But you know, Willie needs game time. You know, he is the number 1 fullback for us. He is the incumbent Springbok, and you know, there's nothing to stop us from moving Willie, you know, to fly half at the back end of the game if we have to, and putting Devin to fullback. So it was, you know, as I said, it wasn't a case of we just sat down and thought, you know, that position specifically, we need to give Willie. You know, when it comes to playoff games, Willie is going to be very important to us because he understands pressure and management, and he's had real high profile games in his career. So, you know, it's one of those, give him a start now, get him some game time, it takes a little bit of pressure off the wingers and the rest of the back line as well. So that's basically the thought process behind putting him in this weekend.
Thanks. Cardiff have had mixed results lately, both home and away. I guess the best you can really do is prepare for a really tough game after Glasgow. How are you guys taking preparation for this?
Yeah, look, I think you summed it up. I think Cardiff mustn't be underestimated. They beat Munster, you know, they beat Ulster. I think they, you know, and anyone who's beaten Munster, you know, needs to play well. I mean, we know that because we had to do it a couple of weeks ago. So we won't for any second, Nicholas, take them as an easy option. They're also desperate. They want to play in the top 8. They want to make sure they make the playoffs. They're coached by Matt Sherritt, who obviously had a stint with the Welsh team. That I'm sure would be a boost not only for him because he comes back, you know, obviously having experienced international rugby, but also the players feel confident that, you know, he's in and around the decision makers of Welsh rugby. So, yeah, I don't think they're an easy team to play against. I mean, they've got some really good players, lots of internationals. So yeah, I suppose what I'm saying to you is we're not going to take it lightly. We've got lots of things we want to achieve this season, and one of them is to get a home semi-final, and in that means we've got to get results at home against both Cardiff and Dragons with the last 2 pool games. So we won't be going in thinking, you know, it's going to be an easy game, or, you know, we should just rock up. I mean, I said it earlier, Nicholas, we've done a lot of hard yards in the last couple of weeks to put ourselves in the position we're in now. The challenge for us as a group, and it's always like that for top teams, is you take the opportunities that are in front of you.
Thanks, Lunga. Morning, Jake.
Morning, Kobus.
Jake, it's a challenge now after that good tour to be consistent. And with consistent, I mean not having a game of two halves again, having a good first half or a good second half, and basically just getting a good 80 minutes performance in.
No, I'm just giggling, Kobus. If we have a poor half and a good half and we end up winning the game, well, then isn't that what it's all about?
No,
And
for
the
sure.
second,
No, for sure.
and the second thing is, which I repeat myself often with you guys, is we're in the playoffs. We're going to play quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals as long as we keep winning. So this weekend, I'm not saying it means nothing. We're in the quarterfinals, and everything we do now is to make sure that the last three games is when we're at our best, and that is exactly that, consistent, 80-minute performances, etc., etc. So. Yeah, I don't want you for 1 minute to think that means we're not taking tomorrow seriously. But we're in the quarterfinals. All we're doing now is we have the opportunity to decide where we play, as opposed to having to travel. And that would just mean that's the sweetener for us. That's the motivation for us, and the destiny is in our hands. We're fully aware of the fact that we've got 2 home games. We can't control what happens to any other team, but the 2 home games that we get. If we play as well as we can and we get results, we could possibly then not have to travel until the final, as the log stands now. And on historics or history of this competition, chances are we could play at home, because it hasn't happened too many times. I don't think it has happened where the top team that's finished top of the log has hosted the final. So, if I go on the history of the competition, it could quite likely be that, and I'm only talking about history, is that you could end up not having to travel again this season, which is obviously what all teams want to do, is play at home and have the luxuries of home comforts and home preparation, etc., etc. So I want a perfect performance, but for me, the perfect performance have to come in the last 3 weeks. And part of the jigsaw puzzle is how we can manage the next next 2 weeks and the lead into the quarterfinals to make sure we spot on in the last 3 weeks.
Jake, and just looking at with Gerhard Steenekamp still out, Jan-Hendrik Wessels is getting a good run at Lucid. You must be looking forward to his performance after that strong stint he put in against the Warriors in Glasgow the other night.
Well, yeah, and he's loving playing with Wilco in the other side of the scrum. I mean, he's learning a lot. Remember, they talk scrumming now, and obviously it was his birthday this week. He's now 24. He's growing up. And I've always said to you, Kobus, he's a very talented rugby player, and I'm happy for him, because I think he's realizing now that he has got talent and that he can do special things. But I'm also looking forward to when Gerhard gets back, because then that's competition for a jersey, and then it means there's pressure on everybody in the front row, because he can play hooker as well. And I'm not going to move away from telling you guys that I think he can be a phenomenal front row player anyway. But I'm obviously very happy that the lights come on. I've said it many times that I rate him very highly, and I'm very happy that maybe that was the game he needed to realize that he can jump up to the next level. I mean, he was Os to run like, and I know I said that after the game, and I don't say that lightly, because Os, for me, Kobus, is probably, and not for me, is probably the best Lucid prop South Africa's ever had. In fact, one of the best props the world has ever seen at Lucid. And for me to make a comment like he's Os to run like means a lot, because I was lucky enough to coach Os. And I think there are glimpses at times where I can see resemblance of how Os was when he was the same age.
Jake, just on that note, when will Gerhard be available again?
Yeah, Kobus, it sounds like, again, a cliche. It's like work in progress. He's back on in training. He's working hard. It's now a question of how long will it take for him to be spot on and be able to play. And it's not going to get any easier, because as we go deeper in the season now, it gets to knockout rugby, and it's almost test like as we get to the end. So it's not you can't just bring him back and give him 20 minutes, 30 minutes off the bench, because it could quite possibly be a knockout game. We'll be playing against international front row. And so my answer to that is, as soon as he is ready and as soon as he's confident, then obviously we can make a call. But at this point in time, he's doing everything he can just to make sure that he can get back onto the field.
Hi, Jake. I hope you're well. Yeah, just quickly on what was Gerhard's injury again?
He went actually, Ashfaq, for a clean out on his knee, and fortunately there was, I'm not saying complications. I think one of the wounds just got a little bit infected, and the infection got worse and worse. So they had to not redo it, but they had to then go and clean the wound, and then obviously over time, because it's a knee injury, it's not something you can rush back. And when it was swollen and flared up, they had to they restarted the process again. So what was supposedly going to be a very in and out operation turned out through the infection to be much longer and much more difficult for everyone. So he's fine. I mean, everything's fine. His knee's perfect. I just think they put him back a bit because of the infection that didn't go away over a period of time.
Yeah. Just Imro's Papier, not playing this weekend. Is he okay? Or?
Yeah. He's just it's precaution. He remember you saw last week against Glasgow, just before half time, he sort of rolled his knee, but he's had scans. Everything's fine. It's just, again, I don't want to rush him. He's going to be important in the back end of the competition. I don't want to rush him in now and risk something that doesn't need to be risked.
Yeah, because I'm just asking it because it's quite a tricky part for you, knowing you're already in the quarterfinals, but you want to get momentum going into it, but also manage the workloads of some of the players. Because I was thinking perhaps it could have been like you didn't do a mix and match kind of combination for this weekend, but you're pretty much full strength for Cardiff. I guess it speaks to how good Cardiff are. But was it a difficult decision in that regard, because now you've got Dragons next weekend or bottom of the log, without disrespect to them, and then it's a week off before the quarters?
Yeah, as you talk, when is the right time? And I suppose I repeat myself. We have to have the best possible team available for the last 3 games of the competition. And if that means in the bye week we play a friendly against someone, or we play internally against each other, then we might have to do that. But it's now the business end of the competition, and we don't use that again. When you guys write about it, that's exactly, it's the business end of the competition, and it's not a case of rotating and, should you be playing this guy? We have to make decisions based on where we are, who we're playing against, what we need this week. I mean, what happens this week is more important about what happens next week, because you can't control next week. You can only control this week. And too many times you start thinking about what happens next week and the following week, and then you take your eye off the ball in terms of what you need now. And what we need now is we need to beat Cardiff, and then we can worry about whatever we need next week from Monday.
Yeah. No, I hear you, because sometimes also injuries can throw a spanner in the works.
100%.
You rest someone now this week, but then they come next week, then they get injured just before the quarterfinals. So
100%. You're
I guess
spot on. Let's be. I did it with Ambrose, and then, I mean, thank goodness I gave Ambrose some time off, and the reason for that is because I let Zach and Keegan play. And now, as it turns out, Zach and Keegan need to play because Ambrose is not available this weekend. So, I mean, it's not only half empty, it's sometimes half full as well. Is that when you do rotate in the middle of the season, you end up getting a guy like Zach, who, by the way, has got more than 50 URC games anyway, starting in the team. And you don't sit here thinking, gee, I haven't given him game time. He's a bit inexperienced. He hasn't played this season. I mean, both those nines have played enough rugby against big teams and in big games for me to be confident that Ambrose doesn't need to play this weekend.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Just one more, Jake. Many years back, when your favorite lock, Victor Matfield, went to Toulon, and they made him play Predator at blindside flank. I don't know if you remember that. When he was at Toulon, he started at blindside flank. Yeah, now you've got another Springbok number 5 at blindside flank in Rouen. I know you've started in there before, but yeah, just a thinking, and is it a possibility for later on in the competition also?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we lost Elrich Lowe, and he was obviously our number when I say number 1, he was our most commonly used number 7 and 8. So you need to think out the box. And as fuck, you forget. I mean, I started coaching Peter Steph du Toit when he was a youngster at the Sharks, and I also moved him to 7. So I've seen guys that can play 5 and 7. I mean, Bucky's, I'm not sure if you guys know, but he played SA Schools flank, and then ended up playing lock as well. So it is the way that the game is played. Ruan Nokia is as I've said to you, is a phenomenal player, and he's very important to us. And the fact that we've got Jeff van Heerden who's playing well, and we've got Kobus Visa who's a 4 lock, means that we have the luxury of playing Ruan Nokia as a 7 flanker. So that, you know, as I said, I've done it before with players, and it's just basically picking a side that will then be able to control all the facets of the game. In other words, scrum, line out, you know, work rates, etc., without compromising any of those things. We're very comfortable that Ruan Nokia can do a role for us within the group that we've got playing now with him, as a 7 flanker. And as I told you beginning of the year as well, I have no doubt that, you know, he could play 7 flanker as an international player as well.
Yeah, and of course that line-out option at the back is always worth gold.
Correct.
Thanks, Jake. Good luck.
Thanks, Ashfaq. Thank you.
As Jake, it seems like almost everything's been asked already, but I just had one quick question. I was looking at the stats this week of the URC, and there's a noticeable absence of Bulls players in the individual stats there, especially in things like clean breaks and that, where last season guys like Kirtley and the guys were there and quite high up in the stats. I suppose that's good and bad in one way, in the fact that it just shows how much more of a team effort this season has been without a game breaker like Kirtley.
Sorry, Ben, I'm going to tell you it's not good and bad. I mean, the stats have changed because Kirtley's overseas. Kirtley's probably top of the pops in the Mitsubishi Boars team in the Japanese league. And that's the same thing I tell you. It's not good for South African rugby that the best players who make the line breaks are playing all over the world and not for our franchises. So it's not a good and a bad thing. It's a bad thing. It's a very bad thing that you build a guy and you bring him to the club and you make him who he is, and then you don't have the luxury of having him when you need him the most and at the best time of his career. And unfortunately, you know, that's going to happen more and more, and it's not something that I'm going to, you know, eventually tell you guys, oh, well, you know, let it be. It's very sad that we get to a stage where we talk a lot about bringing players through, but our jobs are not to find youngsters, pay their school fees by putting them in big games and then selling them or handing them over to other clubs to become rock stars. I mean, we're not in that industry. We're in coaching. We're in a country where winning is important. We're in a country where rugby is important. So sorry to lumber the same point, but there's no good in that comment, you know, that your stats are different. The player that we had that used to do all those things isn't here, and that's not through our design.
I understand. Just on him, is there any clarity about when I know the Japanese league determines that, but I suppose, is there any light at the end of the tunnel that he might be back to the Bulls?
I think the horse is bolted. I think he was a cut-off date. He won't be back to play for us. So I mean, that's been put in the paper. Kobus wrote about that, and there's a lot of things in the paper that I read, guys, that you guys know more than me. So yeah, I mean, I read today that one of my props is signed with another franchise. I didn't even know that my prop is still under contract for 2 years. So again, I ask you guys the question. I didn't realize that you can sign a guy when he's got 2 years left. Yeah, and it's, if you've got 2 years left, you can't really chat to a player while he's still under contract. And again, I've heard the same about Kirtley Arendse, and I'm concerned because there seems to be no watchdog when it comes to who's signing who, when they're going, who's talking to who, you know, who goes overseas, who can stay. I mean, it's just really, you know, all the sort of things are fascinating to sit on the outside and look. So Ben and I, you know, another player signed for another franchise, and all I hear about is salary caps and restrictions and all that sort of stuff. So I can't answer you, but I will say whatever I know, you know, and it's in the paper. So 1 week I read Kirtley not keen to come back, but he's got a year and a half left on his deal. And I read today Simpiwe wants to go to the Sharks. He's got 2 years left on his deal. So next year you're going to tell me, isn't it amazing? The stats show that your lucid prop makes less tackles than the one you had last year. And probably right, because the lucid prop I had this year has gone to another club.